My name is Selina Martinez. I'm Yaqui and Chicana, born and raised in Phoenix, Arizona. I associate myself with the Yaqui communities Pengamo and Guadalupe here in the context of Arizona, but our homelands are actually in Sonora, Mexico. Many of the Yaquis that came here were purely to escape the violence that was happening from the Mexican government during the early 1900s, which is why, like places like Guadalupe got established, old Pascua in Tucson got established, and then later, we were able to gain tribal recognition in the 70s. Not until I, went to college and then started to realize that I didn't see myself in the curriculum that I was being taught architecturally, is really when I was like, oh, I don't know if this is like the profession that I can relate to. I'm not sure if this is for me. Luckily, I was able to meet somebody who was indigenous and who was a woman and who was an architect at our school, which really changed the way that I thought about how I could use architecture as a tool moving forward. The project that I submitted to the NDN Collective is of creating a speculative future. Before I can have that conversation with my community in an authentic, genuine way, I really needed to establish a reference point for people to engage in that dialogue, which became this way that I framed the project in a past, present, future type of situation. So that's the way I've divided up my project, which is called Juebenaria, and Juebenaria means plural in the Yaqui language because the intent of the project is to uplift varied Yaqui identities and not just a singular type of identity that we typically kind of associate with the Yaqui culture. Understanding the history and where we come from has been the most, I would say, important part of Juebenaria so far, and what people have actually really engaged with. That migration or that escape of the violence that was happening from where we came from. Many of those atrocities that happened, but also the resilience of our Yaqui people to continue to be unconquered by the people who were trying to suppress our culture and suppress our people and to basically exterminate us as a culture. So luckily with today's, newer technologies, there is the device called a 3D scanning device, which captures 3D data of a space. What I've been doing more so in the present aspect is to capture and document and archive those significant locations to our Yaqui people at this point in time. I can't go back in time and document what was there before. I could potentially recreate that through 3D visualization, but with the 3D scanning technology, I can archive what we have right now and then use that data to then move it into the future of where we could be in the future, which is kind of the next step of the project. Most people who know about Yaqui people know that we're deeply religious due to Catholicism coming into our original villages and infiltrating our culture and creating this new hybrid version of indigenous and Catholic ways of being. From my understanding of looking at Yaqui architecture from our homelands, it uses a lot of natural materials from our ecosystem. The most significant architectures are the least permanent type of structures that you'll see at the houses, like the ramadas that get built seasonally, or the puestos, which are the stands that we build to sell our food out of during Cuaresma. Those are what I see as architectures of Yaqui people, at least in the context of Guadalupe, as something that really symbolizes our culture and the way that we go about practicing our culture through the built environment. I would say more so the way that people situate and use their space with outdoor cooking, the way that they gather in the front, the way that they decorate our houses with altars or, symbolism of our Yaqui culture. People don't realize that any aspect of development relates to resources. That's food, water, anything you need infrastructurally to develop. So people need to see something visual to really feel, you know, like that is a value. And then that turns into development, into policy, into all these other aspects that are more invisible type of systems. So how can the architecture help us practice our culture? How can the architecture help us learn about our culture? How can it make us feel connected to our culture in any sense? If somebody else is designing our community, they're designing the environment we live in, they're designing the way we behave. But if we reclaim that and take back those positions and you know, design for ourselves, then we are really empowered and have more autonomy over the way that our community develops and evolves into the future.